Hey everybody, welcome to today's Kubernetes Masterclass. Really happy to have you all on the line. We have a lot of great stuff to go through. While people are joining, I want you to know this session is being recorded and we will send out the slides and the recording of the session after the training. So if you need to hop off or you get disconnected or anything like that, don't worry, you will be able to revisit it, and we're going to be going over DevOps alerting and visualization with Prometheus and Grafana. So this should be a really useful lecture today, class today. So let's jump in. As a way of introduction, my name is Matthew Shear. I'm a marketing manager here at Rancher, help on the community side too, host these training sessions and our intro to Rancher and Kubernetes on Thursday. So if you have not taken that or you're brand new to Rancher or brand new to Kubernetes, it is a great training. You can ask live questions, get those answered. We'll go through a demo and Kubernetes concepts. And our presenter on the line is our Director of Community, Jason Van Brackel. Jason, are you there?
I am here.
All right, great. Well, I'll let Jason introduce himself a little bit more as in a moment when I pass the presentation to him. But our contact info is here, so if you all do want to follow up or you have questions that you think of after the session, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We love connecting. And if you are looking for slides or you're looking for a resource, I'm happy to connect you to that. And this session is, we keep the material to 40-45 minutes, but I think we pretty much always go long. We have 90 minutes scheduled. So, that's why I say this is recorded, and if you need to hop off, don't worry about it. And we try to be really responsive to what you want to learn. So questions are absolutely welcome. There's a questions tab in the GoToWebinar control panel. For whatever reason you want your question to be private, just let us know. Otherwise, we'll answer it aloud for the benefit of everyone as part of the education. And we will take some moments during the presentation to pause and answer those questions. As I said, this is recorded. There's a ton of other classes like this one on a lot of different topics related to Kubernetes, to containers, to Rancher on our YouTube. They're all free. And they go back a couple years, and there's just a ton of stuff when we add to it every week. So please do check that out. And if you're looking for something, again, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. So with all of that out of the way, I'm going to pass this presentation over to our Director of Community, and he can get us going. So Jason, I'm making you the presenter.
Okay. Let me make sure I get the right screen. All right. So if you'd like to join the conversation today, come join us on Slack. If you'd like to sign up for Slack, you'll want to navigate to, let's see, I've got up here somewhere. Here it is, slack.rancher.io. Put in your email address, get your invite, and then you'll sign into the Rancher users. And if you join the Masterclass channel, you'll be able to join myself and other people who are here in the room today. So feel free to ask questions there, ask them when they go to meeting. We'll be checking both of them as we get along. So I'm going to close that so it's not a distraction. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I am Jason Van Brackel, pretty much everywhere, or JVB, depending on where you find me. But feel free to send out questions, comments, anything you see. I am also out on GitHub as well. So if I do that, and I'm Jason Van Brackel there as well, except spelled properly. So feel free to follow me wherever. Basically, the GitHub is useful because everything that I do for my demo environments, the demos like today, it all ends up out here. It's I open source all of it, so you all can learn as well. So with that, let's oops, wrong screen. There we go. So today, we're going to talk about Prometheus and Grafana, and this is a continuation of the conversation that we had back in June. Back in June, we actually had a class on this. Let's see if you go back to revisit that, you can go to rancher.com/Kubernetes-master-class. You go all the way down to June 25th, there was this applying the site reliability engineering golden signals to your K8s cluster using Prometheus and Slack. So this is a continuation of the conversation that we had back in June. If you'd like to see that recording, if you click on that, enter your information here, you'll get the recording and slides. As you can see, Christoph's excellent presentation. I actually went back and watched it yesterday to make sure that I wasn't, overlapping too much what he'd already talked about. So we're not assuming you went and watch this. We're not assuming, Prometheus and Grafana, knowledge, but understand we do have other day two operations in the same subject matter that we've already talked about. So go check that out as well. So, agenda for today. We're talking about what I mean by DevOps, because there's lots of marketing out there for it, and just the other items here. We don't have to read them all. So let's talk a little bit about DevOps. So when I talk about DevOps, I'm talking about 3 specific books, and really it's 2 books and a few other resources. But the first and foremost is the Phoenix Project. This book is now about 6 years old, 7 years old now, and it is a narrative about an organization that was buried in its own technical debt, its own operational debt. And so this is, when I talk about DevOps, this is what I'm talking about. Companies that go from siloed internal business units that throw code over the wall and throw deployments over the wall to a properly aligned end-to-end process where you go from code to prod via as much automation and collaboration as possible. So I'd highly recommend that book. I'd also highly recommend the book that this was an homage to, a book called The Goal. Now, the goal goes into process improvement, but we're going to talk about metrics today, and metrics are key to process improvement. And I'm a big fan of theory of constraints. I have built a lot of processes in my time in various roles in this industry. Went and read this years and years ago. This book goes back to the 80s. It's old enough to have a graphic novel version of it created. So you actually see, if you go out into Amazon, they have this edition of the book, but there's also a graphic novel edition of the book. I haven't bought that yet. I'm considering getting it just to check it out, because it's a cool idea. And a lot of theory constraints and DevOps theories work well visually taught. And the third book is DevOps Handbook. So where that first book I showed, the Phoenix Project, is a narrative. It talks about a fictional company walking through a DevOps transformation. This is the how-to manual. The first one, you'll get through in like a week. It reads really well. The Audible is excellent. This is much, much drier. It will take you a while to chew on, but it's well worth it, because it is the how-to for what you need to get essentially world-class agility. I look at companies like Etsy, for example. I buy stuff on Etsy occasionally, but they're like the prime example of a company that was buried in its own technical debt and is now one of the poster child for this type of operations. So let's talk Prometheus and Grafana for a moment. So Prometheus is a piece of open source software. It was started by SoundCloud back in 2012. It is a CNCF project, and it deals with time series-based machine data. What I mean is, quite literally, something with a name and something with a floating point 64-bit number. You can find it out here at Prometheus.io. Definitely follow up with this and go read the docs. I'll refer to them here and there, because I didn't feel like taking things too much from the docs and turning it over to PowerPoint. I think it's pretty useless. And their documentation is quite excellent. So this has been a CNCF project since 2016, alongside of projects like Kubernetes, projects like OpenEBS, projects like Harbor, and others. And Prometheus is a little bit like this. Your Prometheus server is storing in a TSDB, or time series database, has an HTTP server, and has various methods of grabbing that data that can come in via a push gateway. So actually jobs pushing metrics to the gateway, the pulling metrics via exporters and via metrics endpoints. We're going to do that today. And then be able to discover different targets via Kubernetes, via file system. And then we see 2 other areas. This alerting area, Prometheus Alert Manager. We'll talk a little bit about that today as well. And then PromQL. And this is a query language for doing things like their web UI and visualization. You see Grafana here as well. Although Grafana and Prometheus were not started by the same organization, and Grafana is not a CNCF project, it is maintained by another company. it is, goes hand in hand with what we see in Prometheus. So Grafana, this is also an open source project. It's maintained by Grafana Labs. I'm liking the name there, Rancher Labs Rancher. And it's a really beautiful visualization and analytics platform for time series based data. So just, I leave the links in the slides because we'll send out the slides along as well. And you can see everything you'd ever want to know about Grafana. So it is an open source project, but they also have cloud and enterprise products that they sell as well to keep the lights on, because we all love open source, but we all got to make money too. And it's it's also very well documented and very well supported, including supported by Rancher. And Grafana said, really beautiful dashboards. This is actually one that comes with the Kubernetes cluster or our monitoring feature. We did a blog post back in 2018 on monitoring Kubernetes with Prometheus, and I just pulled that from there as well. And since version 2.2 in Rancher, we have Prometheus and Grafana support built right in. We'll actually turn it on today. It includes Prometheus, it includes Grafana, it includes several operators that plug all those things together, UI components, and various other ways to hook your metrics into together with Prometheus and Grafana. We'll actually show that off today as well. Documentation link there here in the slide. So you turn it on, we'll go to a cluster, and we'll actually just click on this enable monitoring to see live metrics. And when we're done, we'll get a whole lot more information and Grafana dashboards in Rancher. So let's do a quick, just basically covering the bases to get to the point where you can actually start making use of this. So metrics and PromQL. So metrics in Prometheus consist of a name that can be Unicode characters, a timestamp, a float 64 value, and a set of 0 or more labels. It looks like it's the same notation that's used by OpenTSDB, which has the metrics name, and then the curly brackets with the label name and label value. So a couple examples there: your HTTP request total, with your with a verb and with a path. And these are two common examples of metrics. And then that metric will then have the counts associated with it stored in the TSDB with time slices. So PromQL, this is Prometheus query language, and this is a query language that allows you to pull data from the TSDB. It has support for instant vectors, so the instant vector is just the name of the metric. And they have range vectors. We're grabbing a metric, we're grabbing over a slice of time. So this is basically give me that same metric over the last hour and get me it in 1 minute slices. Now, Prometheus is smart because if you're grabbing every second or every minute for 60 minutes, it's not always going to be exactly on the minute. So it will actually do some math around there to help even it out. It can handle literals, things like strings and scalars, because it also has operators for things like arithmetic and conditional operators. And it also has functions for doing max and min, things of that nature. We'll look at that a little as well. And it supports subqueries. I put a good example of what subquery support looks like. We may actually walk through that as well, depending on our time today. And then again, the link down here for querying basics. Oh, it helps if I make an extra hyperlink. So if you want to go to the query basics, that's pretty easy to find. We just go into Prometheus and querying and basics, and it's right here. So we'll do a couple of these as well once we get our metrics up and running. Maybe we'll do the subquery one too, because that'll be interesting to look at. So what do you track? Because the golden signals are really, really useful. Going back to that talk, and there are a lot of things that your web servers already tell you out of the box. Things like network I/O, things like 200s or 300s per minute. 500s per minute. These are all things that are out of the box, ready to go, really common. But we're talking DevOps. This is the collaboration of developers, operators, security, and most importantly, the business and your customers. That idea that you have a fast flow of data from your development team all the way to your customer, and from your customer all the way back. And that includes the runtime statistics. So really, it's up to you. The sky is the limit. But I'll give you a few ideas. exceptions that don't return a 50x. So, your microservices may have complicated relationships with other external services. I was thinking today about the way Mint works, the way you need a budget, these budgeting software works on the web. Most of them actually hire a third-party service to go talk to your banks, talk to your credit cards. So there is some tracking they should be doing on the success of those calls out to the third-party service, and they have workflows that they own that are critical dependencies on a third-party service. So there should be metrics, or they should be tracking, and they probably are tracking significant amounts of metrics around the success of those workflows. Various contractual obligations. I've been a vendor for multiple companies in the past, and we worked with, we had SaaS offerings. We worked with companies where they said, we can't, this load screen can't take any more than 6 seconds to run. So that's great, because we can unit test in our testing environment at a rate that takes less than 6 seconds, but they're not running in our test environment. They're running in our production environment. So all these contractual obligations that we have with third-party companies, those are things that you should put metrics around. SLAs. So SLAs are service level agreements. Sometimes they're contractual based. Sometimes they're internal SLAs between teams. So if you have an offering that you're offering up to other members of your organization, take an SLA out on things that are important to your internal customers as well, so that they don't see a degradation of their user experience as they're working with your software. And then any important business workflow. If I'm Ticketmaster, for example, I'm probably using a third-party credit card processor as part of buying a ticket. I'm probably using some sort of seat map data or imaging data, things that aren't mine. But there's an entire workflow to, let's say, buying a ticket. And even as a user, I'd like to track how long it would take, to go from I'm thinking about buying a ticket, I'm hitting the Ticketmaster website, all the way to I've bought the ticket. Now that workflow will jump through multiple screens, will jump through multiple processes. So there's some sort of ability to track that from beginning of the process to end, and create it as a metric that goes on a dashboard somewhere that somebody could see. Hey, on average, it's taking our users 5 minutes to buy a concert ticket, and maybe that's good, maybe it's not. But the idea being, you're continually looking to improve by adding more and more useful data available to people who need it. Either people in the business who modify processes, like going back to the theory of constraints, to people who we just want to know, hey, your customers understanding user experience, the customer experience over time. So how do you instrument? So today we're going to be talking about Prometheus Grafana. So you either need to choose a client library to talk to Prometheus, or you need to write one. There are lots of good ones out there. So I would not suggest writing your own unless you really, really have to, because they have 4 of them they support. And I see a few languages really big in the enterprise here, and some third-party client libraries. I'm actually going to use the .NET C# one today, only because that's the one I've been working with most often. It made putting the demo together a little bit easier for me. But understand, the ones they're linking to are good enough for them to be included in the Prometheus website. So I would start there before writing your own. But it's using the Prometheus API. And if you want to write your own, they have documentation for that. But we'll use one that's already out there today. So first, client library. You want to expose some endpoints or push to a gateway. In this case, we're going to expose an endpoint today. And then you're going to have to configure Prometheus to scrape that endpoint. We're going to do that with Rancher today. And then create various alerts and visualizations and playlists. Playlists are just rotating dashboards in Grafana to constantly see what's going on, both for people who are not looking at a visualization, or just having things on the walls that maybe you notice there's, maybe you notice it's going from green to yellow to red before somebody's pager's going off, or they're in a meeting and don't quite notice. So there are lots of ways to make sure that there's a problem before your users know there's a problem. So if I'm going to suggest a process to you, I would suggest, first designing and instrumenting out your metric. Deciding what your metric is, what's important to you, and then instrumenting that into your software. Track it under normal production load for a while, and even high production load. So get an idea of what the range is of acceptable, number for that metric, because some metrics are time-based, some are money-based, all of those things. And then create your internal SLAs, things that you're going to track, that you're going to test against, both at your unit testing, your integration testing, and then your production metrics gathering and visualizations. And then track, visualize, and maybe even alert those items. That way, you don't end up in a situation where your users are suffering. It's just an ops alert goes off, you diagnose the problem, you fix the problem before your users notice. Or if there's a really big problem, you notice as the service is degrading versus it's already gone. Look at the if you go, I really love looking at the retrospectives from when things go wrong with big companies, like the Cloudflare outage. It was one of those things. They made a change. It worked great on the development machine. It worked well in testing, and then when it hit production globally, CPU spiked the entire world. But their instrumentation caught it within 2 minutes. They started noticing there was a problem. It took them 30 minutes to fix the outage, and everything was out within 5 or 10, if I remember correctly. But they knew, even before everything was out, that there was a major problem they had to address. So before I jump into our demo today, any questions?
Yeah, there is one question, Jason. And one question, one comment. This is from Alexi, who says, and actually this might be better for the demo, but I'll just ask it.
Okay.
Is it good practice to set up service monitors to export metrics to project monitoring Prometheus, or would you recommend setting up yet another Prometheus for custom metrics?
So it's whatever you prefer. I'm actually going to use the built-in Prometheus and Grafana today that's with Rancher. I considered doing a standalone, but I wanted to see what the integration brought me as far as the ability to modify things, and I had everything I needed. So I decided to actually use everything built in. Some caveats with that, of course, is making sure that you have you said persistent storage and things like that, so that the changes you make to your Prometheus and Grafana survive a reboot or survive clusters going down. But yeah, it's really how much control do you want. If you want to control everything, by all means use your own. If you want to click the easy button and use what we think are sane defaults, then by all means use ours. It's not gonna hurt having one or the other or even both.
Cool. Okay, thank you. And then this quick comment from Will, who says, this is a book recommendation from what you mentioned earlier. He asks, what about Beyond the Phoenix Project, the Origins and Evolution?
Oh, good point. Yeah, I meant to put that slide of that. Yeah, so Beyond the Phoenix Project is also excellent because it was a set of podcasts that the authors did after the Phoenix Project based on what was learned in the community. So that's well worth your time. But I recommend that if you're going to go look at Beyond the Phoenix Project, don't go and grab the transcript of everything. Actually, listen to the podcast. Actually, I think there is an Audible book where they took all the podcasts and turned it into an Audible book. I think it's what I chewed through the first time I did it, because I'm an Audible customer. Because I like audiobooks just because I have 3 kids, which means I have cleaning to do and laundry, and it's a good time to listen to audiobooks. The DevOps handbook, though, on the audiobook, I have it. It's just a tough read. It's a tough read with Audible. It's better. I like that one better in print. So good comment. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jason.
So let's get started. Oh, I did forget to mention, no, I don't want the upcoming classes. We'll talk about that afterwards. I did forget to mention other training opportunities. So you all found this through rancher.com/training. I did mention earlier the previous one. We also have local Rancher rodeos. If you're getting started with Kubernetes and containers in production, go check out a Rancher rodeo. These are live on site. I did one in the Baltimore area last week. I'm doing one in Philly this week, all over the country and the world. I believe there's one in Vancouver coming up as well. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was, let's see, we already talked about joining the Slack and my Twitter. The Ranchcast. I am relaunching the Ranchcast tomorrow. About 20 people knew about this when I soft launched it back in the spring. It's now relaunching on Twitch, but if you're in an enterprise environment that blocks Twitch, but not YouTube, we'll broadcast there as well. Or if you're a Microsoft junkie, we're Mixer friendly. So we'll actually live broadcast to all 3 at the same time. And the Slack channel for that will actually be called the Ranchcast. It's already out there as well if you want to check that out. So let's get started with the demo. I'm going to leave the Slack up for notifications. We may touch on some things. So the first thing I need to do is we're going to talk about the client libraries. So I grab a specific client library and a specific application here. So we're going to instrument our own application with a custom metric. So this is a dirt simple application. I'll make sure that you can make sure you can get the code to this. So this is a piece of software called This Is Fine, and all of This Is Fine is a little tiny microservice that I use for demos when I just want something that returns back 200 okay and everything is fine. So if I launch this on my local machine, and it's meant to be easily shoved into a container, it will launch, and every time I hit reload, everything will be fine, and it will use a random time between 2 and 10 seconds. 0 and 10 seconds. So it will either respond instantly or it will wait a little while, and it's random. But I can also set a custom delay if I want to make things go really badly via an environment variable. So if you want this code to play around with or repeat what we're doing here later on your own time, let's see, where did I put that? Firefox, github.com/me/this is fine. And let me make sure that's also now public, because I did private, because I want to make sure it actually worked before I made it public. So let's go ahead and make this a public repo so you can all see it as well. So we're going to make that public. And yes, I understand that people can fork this ugly demo. And confirm. No. So you can now get it at jasonvanbrackel.thisisfine. And really, all it does is it's a little tiny Kestrel based web host that just gets the event and returns everything is fine, everything is awesome, or 500 if there's an error. You can also do that as well. But I built it just for doing things like this because we want to actually talk about metrics. So first things first, we need a client. So going back to our Prometheus client libraries. This specific application is .NET based, and it's .NET Core. That way, it can also run in Linux and work in Linux and be used in Linux microservices in Kubernetes. Now I could do Windows Server containers and all of that, but I just didn't want to get into all that. So the .NET C# library is called Prometheus-Net. I've used it quite a bit for a couple of years now. It's one of the better libraries out there. It's very well written, even though it's not part of the Prometheus project. It's well documented as well, and that's the biggest thing. Is documentation is product. But documentation is product, and it's important in making things work. So I've used this on a number of occasions. If you're a .NET-based shop, feel free to do that as well. There are other client libraries for Java. So the first things first is, we need to actually instrument this. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to instrument. We're going to instrument what's something called a histogram. And so histogram allows us to take small slices of our data for extra querying. So there are everything from simple counters all the way to things as complicated as histograms that we can query against. So let's create a quick and dirty histogram. Now, in the time series database, they're really all just stored as metrics. There's no differentiation between the type of metric in the Prometheus database. They all kind of work the same. So let's go ahead and I need to see everything. And I'm just going to add my package. I'm going to grab the Prometheus. Wow. So I usually use this on Linux, and it's a little bit faster there. But I'm going to grab Prometheus.ASP.NET Core because that actually gives me components to automatically surface my metrics automatically. And actually, it's pretty quick, so I don't worry about it as far as being a hog. This thing's been around for a while. You can see it's version 3.14. So now I've added just two projects. I've got ASP.NET Core, Prometheus.NET that. I've also grabbed Prometheus.NET, which is one of the dependencies, and I already had Microsoft ASP.NET Core because this is what this thing is. So let's go ahead now, excuse me, and add in the code pieces that we need. The first things first is, well, we actually need a metric. So I'm going to create a histogram. I'm going to create a histogram with some custom buckets. I'm going to go up here and just paste this code in because I was doing this earlier. And I'm going to need some things from my Prometheus reference, and both, if you're using Java, IntelliJ is awesome. If you're using .NET, ReSharper is awesome. And if you're on a Linux machine, Writer is awesome. So, I use Writer for this because I've been practicing on my Linux machine and want to make sure I had some more experience. Now I have my Prometheus library here. I have a metric called This Is Fine metric. This is fine in seconds, and it's our process duration in seconds. And the histogram configuration has, we're bucketing data, and we're starting it in 0 seconds. We're going, 1 second at a time for a count of 10. So it doesn't really know what seconds are. They're actually, Prometheus is a concept of recommended base units. So that's worth looking at the documentation for. So base units, when writing queries, go back to Prometheus and querying, and we want to talk about base units. And I can't remember exactly where that is, but we're going to see if it's here in the queries. Nope, not in the gotchas. Maybe it's in the best practices. I bet it's in the best practices. Let's see. I know it's in this document. I've read this documentation a bunch of different times, and I'm just forgetting where exactly the best practices link is. Maybe it's up here. And you know what? This is why we have search. So I do best practices site Prometheus.io. There we go. That's metrics and label naming. That's where it is. So under the metrics label naming, there's this concept of base units. They recommend, so units are not hard coded into the system. So when you name your metrics, name them with a base unit. So if you're doing time, use seconds. If you're using temperature, use Celsius. You get the idea. That way, there's no confusion as to what your metric means. The meaning of your metric is just as important as the metric data itself. So we're tracking seconds, as I mentioned. So we have our metric now, but we need to actually be able to track that. Now, this specific client library makes that really, really easy. So I'm going to go into my try catch block here, and at the beginning of this, I'm going to start tracking this. I'm going to use a using statement, and it's the metric name. In this case, this is fine metric. And then, is there with labels? There is with labels. So I can expand this to include labels. So these are unlabeled metrics. This is just a plain old metric. I can label metric by IP address. I can label by host. I can do it's arbitrary key value pairs, just like labels in Kubernetes. Arbitrary key value pairs that allow us to filter and group our metrics. So if I want to track a specific label, I would do it with labels. We're not going to do that today. And we're just going to have a new timer because this is something we're tracking time. And let's just wrap this whole try catch block, and that should be it. So now we've defined our metric, and we can start collecting it, and we are now tracking the actual data. So we've instrumented our metric, but we also now need to expose our metric. Like I said, there are lots of ways to do this. You can push metrics to a push gateway. We're going to just do the simplest, and we're going to expose an unprotected metrics endpoint. So not production ready by any stretch of the imagination, but simple enough for demo purposes. I expect you to go back and read your documentation before instrumenting something for production. And this also, this is our running application, our running microservice, and it's use metrics. It's a metrics server, I believe. And what that will do is that will just add in an endpoint, not user, use. And that will actually add an endpoint into this microservice that will expose those metrics. And you can see here, starts Prometheus metric exporter, default is /metrics. I could change all of that, but we're going to use it as it is. You can set it up to make it protected and have to authenticate and need tokens. So let's now go build and run this application. So I'm going to stop and we're rerun this application. So now it's running, it's ready to listen. We open it up and we can already see no changes. It's doing exactly what it did before. This application didn't change, and that's the point. It's the actual code of the application did not change as far as a business process standpoint. And that's the important distinction here. Is a lot of the changes we made are features, but new changes to our code have side effects that we may not realize till later down the line. I say it all the time. You try to make something idiot-proof, and God will just build a better idiot. Things are going to go wrong in production that you did not foresee. Some third-party library that you use is going to have something that slows it down. Some external resource that you grab into is going to slow down. So knowing how long things take is a really important thing to track. So if I reload, it'll take some other amount of time. Now this is what's changed. Now this specific service, it will respond to any URL. What's changed now is I now have a new endpoint, and I can see the metrics. You can see here. Here's my histogram. I can already see the sum of of how long that thing has taken and how many times it called. So I can already get from just those two pieces of data an average over a set period of time. But that means I have to start taking time slices over a set period of time, which means I need so I've exposed the metric. Now I need to store and analyze the metric so I can learn on it later. So let's do just that. So first things first, right now we're running on a local machine, so we're going to be able to put this out, onto my Kubernetes cluster, which is good. So let's get our Kubernetes cluster ready. So I set up an HA Rancher cluster earlier today to run through this one more time and to make sure that everything is working. So let's turn on monitoring. So I've got my training cluster. It's out in DigitalOcean. It has no monitoring turned on right now. So we're actually going to enable monitoring both cluster level and project level. We're only going to use project level today. I'm just enabling both of them so they're both there. We'll enable monitoring here. And we're also going to enable monitoring at the project level. So I'm going to go back to my training cluster into my default project because I'm going to throw this. I didn't clean up my mess earlier. And let's turn on monitoring here. So now we can enable monitoring. So we're getting cluster level metrics, so operational metrics about how our cluster is behaving, and operational metrics about how our pods are behaving. So I've already pushed this out to Docker. There's scripts in there to push it out to Docker. You will be able to push, you'll be able to push to my More Human Software repo with the scripts. So make sure to change that for your own purposes. I didn't make that like a variable because this is just a quick and dirty demo. And let's actually get this up and running. So we can already see here we have our project level monitoring, our Prometheus and Grafana. If I go into apps, I have my endpoints for Prometheus and Grafana. So once we can look at Prometheus that's live and running, we can run some expressions here as well. So let's go ahead and get this application up and running. So we're going to go to workloads, and we're going to deploy this workload. And we'll call it this is fine. And it's just my More Humans Software / this is fine and latest. Actually, did I call it that? So I'm actually going to check my scripts to make sure I called it just that. Let's see. Let's open up another. Actually, I can open a terminal right here in this window. So we'll put a terminal here. So if you go into these scripts, I'm too many down. So I have a quick and dirty CI script here. I don't need the VI CI. Actually, I can just cat CI. And so I called it More Human Software. This is fine latest, so no dashes. The Docker file's here, but the Docker file is stupid simple as well. So we cat the Docker file. We can see it's just taking it. It's actually it's a multi-stage build. It's grabbing the .NET. It's grabbing the .NET SDK, doing the build, and then using the .NET runtime to actually run the application. It's like this is the stupidest simple version of a .NET microservices or microservice you could possibly build because you don't even need to have the 2.2 runtime on your machine to build it. I just happen to do it. I have it there for the demo and for the fact that I use this quite often. So. And we're going to expose, so this thing exposes on 8080, so it doesn't need to be privileged or anything like that. And let's go ahead and launch that. So this is fine, is now running. And you can see here, everything's fine, about 2 seconds. And the metrics endpoint is working. At least it should be. Let's see what I got. Yep, here's all my data. So it's been hit down twice because it also counts the metrics endpoint hit, which is, or does it? I'm not sure. That's a good question. I just have to go look at my Kestrel setup to figure out whether it's doing that or not. But if I keep reloading metrics, nothing changes. So no, it does not. So as long as I keep hitting this, it will keep updating my metrics as well, which is great for us to look at, but it's not so great if we want to actually do something with it. And you see, I didn't actually set up this to listen. So if I go actually into this workload, I already have workload metrics based on what's available out of the box in Prometheus and Grafana. But you'll notice I won't have the this is fine metric. So if I go actually into the Prometheus endpoint, I go back to my workloads, go into my apps, and hit up my Prometheus endpoint, I shouldn't have a this is fine. And I don't. But I do have all my other things like my HTTP requests in microseconds. We can see all those values, and we can see here these are all labeled. So in this case, it's the HTTPS endpoint with a Prometheus handler at a specific route, and it has a bunch of other arbitrary metadata, and we can graph that out over time. It's time-based data. Now we don't have much data because it's only been on for a couple of minutes. But as this runs, you're going to start seeing more and more data. So something really important about that is make sure you have the space to keep running that, because you're going to be collecting telemetry for a very long time. Basically, it's how much you're collecting per day times your retention period. So if you go into cluster administration and you go into configuring tools and you go to monitoring, there is information here about how much resources this will use at different levels. So understand that you're not just, you need to have enough cluster to not just run Prometheus and Grafana, but also to enough disk space to handle your rate of gathering times your retention period per day. So keep that in mind as well. That's why this is a beefier test platform with if I go here, I duplicate this, I don't want to lose my spot. So most of the demos that we do them with these really tiny servers. This specific one I've beefed up a bit because I want enough worker nodes to run all my Prometheus stuff, my Grafana stuff, and still have to be able to run a demo program. It's not terrible as far as utilization. You just understand, it does take some utilization. And the more nodes you add, the more workloads you add, the more listening it's going to do, the more cycles it's going to take, and the more data it's going to store. So, any questions before I turn on custom metrics?
There is one. This is actually a follow-up from Alexi, who had asked the question previously, who says, could you talk about automated recovery of the custom dashboards? I couldn't find if there's any functionality for this in Rancher monitoring, or if it's possible.
So the way I would do automated recovery is when I turn on if I turn on monitoring, for example, I didn't turn on persistent storage. So persistent storage is part one. These in themselves are just Helm charts. So you don't have to turn them on here. You can actually go through the apps and turn on the project monitoring app, for example. Now, I wouldn't recommend you do that. You really know what you're doing there, and we even warn you if you go into the app, if I'm going to upgrade this application, we're going to tell you right at the top, it's monitoring for Kubernetes and Rancher 2, and I think in the cluster level one, we even have another warning. So I've not tried to do an automated restore yet, but in theory, the way it should work is I restore my backend persistent storage data, hook up my persistent volume claims, and then turn on the Rancher monitoring with the persistent storage enabled and set up, based on, I wouldn't use a storage class. I'd actually have to set it up to use a specific claim. I'd have to look into that. There's not anything that makes it easy to restore that way, but it is a solvable problem. It's one I haven't figured out. I haven't tried to solve yet. But all the components are in place to make that solvable, I guess, is the gist of my answer there. Anything else, Matthew?
No other questions right now.
Yeah, good question. I'm going to write down a note to actually test that, put that on my list of things I want to test. So, automate it. Prometheus recovery. Maybe I'll do a ranch cast on that. That would be fun. So we have the metrics. We have Prometheus Grafana available to us, but we don't yet have that metric available to Prometheus Grafana. So that's actually, I could have done it right away, but I wanted to just do this in steps. If I edit this workload now, going down to the advanced options and custom metrics, I can expose those endpoints that metric server call, expose that metrics endpoint, which is considered an exporter. So this will set up Prometheus inside of the Rancher provided Prometheus to scrape that. So my container port is the port inside the container. In this case, it's 8080, and the metrics endpoint is /metrics. And I can select protocol. This one is unprotected and insecure, so we'll do it that way, and we'll add the metrics endpoint. And it's actually a recycling workload because we have to inject things in to do that. I haven't looked at the mechanism behind that. I will at some point, as far as the underpinnings of what we're doing there, because I just like to know for my own purposes. But this one is already up, and this one is actually being removed, but we don't have to wait because it's already available to us. And I can hit that, and I can see everything's fine. And if I go to my metrics, I can see my metrics. But it also means that Rancher should be ingesting my metrics now too. So it should be available in all the different parts of Rancher that can use Prometheus metrics. So let's feed this some data, shall we? So I'm going to use over on my Linux box. I'm on a Windows box right now, but I'm SSH in my Linux box. I'm going to use Siege. I like Siege because Siege, when I spell it right, I can just blast some data over. So let's grab 10 concurrent users, and let's just have it run for a minute. And we want it to hit that endpoint. So let me find out where that endpoint is. We're going to grab that, and we'll go. Oops. And then this is fine. So we're going to slam this pretty good, and then just watch the metrics increase. So while this is running, I can see it's hit our metrics endpoint. Oops. Let's hit this and /metrics, and we can see more and more and more data coming in. So you can see here, we're seeing that nothing is happening in 0 seconds. That makes sense to us. Everything is happening in less than infinity, which is good. That means nothing's failing. And we can see a breakdown of how long this process is taking. So in a real life scenario, and it's the contrived one, you might have some buckets for a specific service where green is anything in here, and yellow is anything in here, and red is anything in here. But we can actually set that up as far as our numbers go. And we also, since we already have a count of total calls and a sum of time, we can get an average as well, which is really, really nice. And Siege can still be doing its thing. Oh, we'll have it run again just to give us more data. We'll just have it continually pinging this thing. That sounds good. So we're just let's have it run for the next hour. So my Linux box is doing anything else important right now. So we'll just keep this thing running to see more and more metrics. So now there are a couple ways we can see these metrics since they're being collected. So let's set up an alert. And we'll set up, a ridiculously low alert using PromQL. So going to here, I have my application running. It's serving up stuff as Siege is hitting it. Now let's go into alerts. So early on in the in the development of the Rancher 2X project, all of the workloads were really simple. They were things like workload selectors. Was it available? Was it down? Then I want to say 2.1 something, or maybe 2.2. We had the ability to do PromQL based metrics if monitoring and alerting if the monitoring feature was turned on. So you can see here we already have one as an example. If we edit this, we can see it is a PromQL function separated by other information about it. With another function. This is actually an arithmetic function with all kinds of really interesting data. But actually, let's see what this is pulling, because we want memory usage close to the quota. So we don't really have a quota here, but let's go ahead and see what this is actually pulling from a Prometheus standpoint. So I go to my cluster, go to my apps, grab my Prometheus endpoint, and put my expression in here. And I can see, it's a fairly complicated function that gives us, the percentage that the user is using, and we don't know what the quota is. Actually, we do know the quota is. We look here in Rancher, we can see if it's, the quota is 1 in this case, and if it's greater than 1 for 3 minutes, over a 3-minute slice, if it goes up, it stays up, and none of these are anywhere near that. We can see their data here in Prometheus. That's the wrong one, and we can also even see it over time. So if there were a 3-minute slice where these exceeded 1, which it's nowhere near, then the alarm would go off. But let's actually see if we can see our new metric. We already have it. So we have all of our, this is fine metrics. We can see the sum, and that's just going to keep going up and up because this is a sum, just like count will. We can see count as well. And if we look at the buckets, we can see them by bucket. Really interesting how that goes. We can even see, with their various labels. You can see here, after we added it to Rancher, Rancher also added some extra labels. So we have which endpoint is it? What instance is it? What IP address is it at? What is the name of it? And then the other labels that were already there. So the histogram labels and their various counts. So we've already received more information we can analyze. And if I actually, let's go ahead and do that, just that. If we actually create more than one of these, we'll get even more data. So if we even had just one instance, so if we had multiple versions of this application running, we could see deltas between versions as well. Because remember, we can have one workload, more than one workload service the same API, just based on the call. So now, see even more information, and we have a whole lot more because we have more instances and more buckets and more pods, all serving up the same metric. And this will continue going up because Sage will just keep hitting it. So let's create an alert, shall we? And let's go with this is fine. So let's grab the count over a 5-minute period. So over the last 5 minutes. This is range-based. Now, if I wanted to grab, let's say, maybe you couldn't fetch that. Did I say it wrong? Oh, for 5 minutes. Failed to fetch graph data. Okay, we got our count. All right, that's good. Oh, maybe this is the 5 minutes I want. It's doing that for me. All right, and then let's divide that by the sum. Sorry, yeah, count divided by sum. So the sum is the seconds. I want the sum of seconds divided by the count to get the average. That doesn't make sense to me. All right, let me look at my metrics. So I have the sum 293 divided by the count of total calls. This should keep going up, right? Yep, they should all keep going up. And let's look at it in here. So this is one of those areas where I'm not a Prometheus query language expert. I keep going back to these things occasionally because even I have issues with them, even though I've done a bunch of these over time. So if I execute that, okay. Oh, they're all about 5. So we can see they're all averaging under 5 seconds. So if we get any of them, oh, and I need a buy. So let's do that. And let's do it by pod. All right, I'm using the other one as an example only because, like I said, yeah. Oh, I'm forgetting my parentheses. All right, let's do it over here first, and then by. Could not parse the input by, or maybe it's our special thing. Maybe it has to go to a function. It might be it. Sum. Okay, sum, and it's by. No, there. Sum by pod. That's what I wanted. So what we did is we grabbed the sum of the averages and separated by pods. It essentially gives us very similar information, but we'll get just the pod that is either behaving or misbehaving. So let's go ahead and grab that. Nope, not that one. Back into our metrics. New alert role. Expression. There we go. We can see the individual data points by pod, and they're all. Do we want it greater than? Let's say greater than 2. If it's greater than 2 for, let's go, 10 seconds, then there'll be a problem. So if that average, this should go off immediately. Now, we can't do anything interesting with it until we actually attach a notifier to it. So we're going to go slow process alert. And we'll create that. Did I hit cancel, didn't I? Greater than 1 for, say, 30 seconds. And we'll have to go off immediately. And then we will go ahead and create. And there are advanced options here. We can disable one. We can have them. We can inherit options for a group, but we don't have a group here. There are options to do in this case. So that's great. We have a metric to track that can go wrong. It's already going wrong, but we have no way of notifying anybody that's going wrong. So let's just do that. We'll need to create a notifier first. So we have our alerts. Where are my, oh, that's right. Notifiers are not global level, they're cluster level. So I need to set a cluster level notifier. So all this is being used with Prometheus Alert Manager. And I will use Slack. And bad. So we'll call this a slow process alert. And so I need the URL. So if you're a Slack user, I left this open, didn't I? So I've got this JVB demo channel that I use, and I'll create a custom channel for this. Slow. And we create. So now I need to be able to get alerts here in Slack, or PagerDuty, or whatever you would need for that. So we need our hooks. Incoming webhooks. And we're going to add a configuration. Read your docs. Your configuration will depend on whatever tool you're using. Slack is just an easy one to demo. And we're going to grab our slow channel. We'll add an integration. And this is what we did. We did this webhook URL. So we'll grab that, copy that, over to Rancher. Default channel for that will be slow. And we have no proxying, and we can actually test that to see if it's working. Oh, something went wrong. Connection refused, which is why we have a test button. Testing bot. Testing bot. Oh, do I have to hit OK? No, I should work just fine. Copy URL. No, that should just work. Try it again. Something's not quite right. Change the inputs. Slow process alert. Optional. Is it optional? Because it has a little star by it like it's not optional. Default channel is required. The optional default channel is required. Proxy connect. I ran through this earlier and didn't have a problem, which just means I've done something wrong. Set up instructions. We got the hook. You have 2 options for sending webhook, payload. Yeah, should work just fine. I see nothing in here that shouldn't work. Message settings, post to channel, slow. Yep. How to set up. Yeah, we did that too. I don't know. So we'll have to look into later. But what should happen, and what happened when I ran it earlier, is it really just worked. And I'm not sure why it's not just working. I'm not sure why I'm getting connection refused. Could be, you know, I might have a firewall setting in my, yeah, I'm almost certain I have a firewall setting. So I will go going through that right now. But what will happen is basically there'll be a delay. So you should know there's a little bit of a delay before the alert fires, because it has to be, you know, make sure that it's actually, you know, it's not like an alert that's bouncing on and off. Then from there, then the notification gets sent out, and there's a little bit of delay there. So it's not instantaneous. A lot of people were testing this and testing it out. Tell me, hey, my alert's not firing. I'm like, just give it a moment. It will fire. Everything's on timers here, and those timers only get checked occasionally. But we also have the ability to track that in Grafana. So this may not be there. This is the right. Make sure this is the right Grafana. I'm actually going to make sure I'm in the right cluster, because I have multiple clusters. I've been toying around with this, and I don't want to inadvertently put something in the wrong cluster's Grafana. So I go to my workloads, go here, and I can actually see my workload metrics for my standard workload, for my standard metrics. I can go into Grafana and actually edit this as well. So I need to log in to be able to do something now. Your default username and password are admin, so make sure you change those. And actually, let's manage our dashboards, and let's create a dashboard here. And let's just look at that one stat, shall we? We want to see this is fine count divided by, no, I want to see our count, no, our sum divided by our count. This is fine sum divided by our count. And we can see already here we have data. Let's, instead of grabbing the last 6 hours, let's tell it what to grab. And we can see here how the jobs are behaving. We could even, if we even grab, let's grab so that's useful for seeing changes in time. I like the gauge for live metrics. We'll leave this here. Let's give this a nice little title, panel title, edit. Oh, well, it's in general, that's right. So we'll see this is fine over time. And we'll go ahead and save that. And let's do a gauge. This is the one I like for like a quick visualization to see what's going on. And we'll edit this, and again, we'll do our this is fine. Do our sum, divided by our count. And it wouldn't like that because I want all of them. Oops. So the average, our average right now is 10. And 10 is fine, but we want to actually do something useful with this. So let's actually change this around a little bit. We want to change the visualization here. Oh, which one is it? It's not. Oops, back. Oh, I did it, didn't I? Oh, good. I'm back where I was. So what I want to do is actually change the visualization of this. So there are multiple ways that we can do this. So I want a gauge. So you can see here, 10 doesn't mean anything right now. So we want to know what like green, yellow, red looks like. So by default, we actually get the colors green, yellow, red with some thresholds. We added in the threshold. Let's say 2 seconds is great, 5 seconds not so much, and 10 is red. And immediately we get our gauges here, and we can see we'll put 20 as our max. So we can already see there's a problem here. So I build out my dashboards. I can see whether everything's fine or not, and actually get specific gauges around live metrics, so I can see, this updating every. How often is it updating? That's the reload. So if I want to refresh, I can refresh every 5 seconds. So now this is a live dashboard. So as this number changes, the average for time for these different services, we can see whether there's a problem or not. Now, clearly, I've done something wrong with my math because it shouldn't ever hit 13 unless it goes down. But the math is less important. The fact that you have the ability to do this for your various business needs. So that's about the end of my demo for today. What questions can I answer?
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Okay, let's get to these questions. So here, this one's from Tony, who says, can you configure Prometheus to store data for X number of days?
Retention period. So when you set up your monitoring, we go to Tools and then Monitoring. We can actually set a data retention in hours. So yeah, great question. That becomes important, when you're enabling storage, because right now everything's running in, it's probably running in temporary storage. If I kill these pods, I'm going to lose probably going to lose some data, depending on how they're built. Let's see what they look like under the covers. But yeah, turn on your persistent storage, set your data retention in hours. That way you only keep it for as long as you need it, and you have enough storage to handle your retention policy. It's a good question.
Awesome, cool, thanks. Okay, here's the next one from Engine. I'm wondering whether Rancher prefers federations for multiple cluster monitoring or something like a Thanos structure.
So I am not familiar with Thanos, and we're not using kubefed. We're creating a federation-like. Rancher is acting essentially as a federation system, but we have separated out from an RBAC standpoint the ability to see the cluster level monitoring versus the project level monitoring, and that's in the docs as far as what permissions you need to see that. So yes, it's not a true like kubefed type of thing, and Thanos. Like I said, Thanos, I don't know enough about to speak to, well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Here's the next one. This is from Amit, who says, is there a blog or a page, a docs on rancher.com where all these setups are documented?
All this. So the closest we would have it as far as everything is provided would be in our Rancher docs. into read the docs, and there are both in cluster administration and project administration, setting up Prometheus and Grafana. I don't know if we go deep into how they're set up, but all the code is open source. These are catalogs in Rancher, just like anything else. So if you want to dig into the details of how they're built, you can actually go look.
Okay, cool. Thanks. This next one is from Marcelo, who says, how does the Prometheus Alert Manager plugin work in this scenario? Does Rancher create it under the hook and publish it to Prometheus?
So we are setting up Alert Manager under the covers. We actually can see it running. If I go back to my cluster and look at my workloads, I can see my workloads. Let's see, where do we put that? I should have a cattle Prometheus in here. Oh, one cluster. Hope if I grab the cluster where monitoring is enabled. So we can see here the Prometheus cluster monitoring components. Included in there is the Alert Manager as well. It's likely one of the we have each items on each node, the Grafana, and then the node exporters like you would set up, and then I believe the Alert Manager. I don't remember exactly where that sits inside. It's been bundled into Rancher for quite a while, so I don't remember exactly. I just don't remember off the top of my head which process we stick it in. It's not here in Cattle Prometheus. It's actually, I believe it's in the. Let's see. I'm actually not 100% sure where that is. I'd have to go look that up. As far as the Alert Manager, as far as the Alert Manager itself, but we are taking full advantage of it. Yeah, it's a good question. Let's actually take a look at is it something that we can see from kubectl? I'm curious now myself. Get all. Get all. Oh, hopefully you spell kubectl right. Let's see. I've got. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure where we put it. I do know that's what we're using under the covers. That would probably be, hit up the Slack channel. Maybe Vincent knows off the top of his head, but I'd have to actually go dig through the code a little bit to see where we're putting that. What good question.
Cool. Okay, thanks. Here's the next one. This is from David. We have some applications that will not expose endpoints for metrics. Do you have a recommendation for logging-based monitoring on Rancher, especially with respect to the Elastic Stack?
So if you are going, so the Elastic Stack itself, ELK, Elasticsearch, Log/Kibana, is built for log data. I'm not aware of anything in the Elastic products that does machine data, but that's just that could be there is something I'm not aware of it. So keep in mind that everything that we're talking about here is time series based machine data. So it's quite literally a timestamp, a float 64 value, and a set of key value pair labels. Things that generally go into Elasticsearch, Log/Kibana, or your Elasticsearch Fluentd, Kibana tend to be log data. So actual text data. Hopefully, if you're doing it well, you're creating structured logs. Something like JSON, or if you create YAML. But I like JSON formatted logs personally. If what you could do there, if you go into tools logging, if you already have an elk stack available, you can forward right to an elk stack or forward to a Fluentd. Or if you have unlimited money, you can set all your cluster logs up to Splunk. Good question.
Cool. This is actually related. Emmett asks, is there integration with Splunk?
Not like a Rancher plugin for Splunk, but we will send data to a Splunk endpoint and do event collection.
Cool. Okay, here's the next one. is the monitoring configuration stored in a CRD?
I believe it is. Now I have to go look up on actually we can see if I go into my this is an HA setup, which means I have kubectl on a local cluster. Let's go take a look. I bet it is, but I've never bothered to look. API, get API. I think that's no, maybe that's sorry. It's not a call I look up very often. It helps when you spell kubectl right, doesn't it? So if we look through here, we have Prometheus and Prometheus rules and Alert Manager rules. These are specific to, we're not reinventing the wheel there. But I bet project alerts, project alerts are CRD, as are project alert rules and project alert groups. And I bet we have cluster ones too. Yes, so they are all CRDs.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Here's the next one. If I'm using the latest Rancher and then I install Rio, will they share a Prometheus instance?
Not currently. So that was something that that is being discussed as far as a feature. I don't know what that's going to look like in 2.3. That would be a question for our product team. So yeah, the short answer is not today in the latest alpha. Maybe in 2.3, but I'm not going to speak for the engineering team there.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Here's the next one from Marcy. I missed pointing the Rancher project Prometheus at the running service to scrape metrics. Could you show that? Could you show adding that again?
Sure thing. So let's actually we'll just re-add another copy of this workload. Not local. And let's just go ahead and add another one. And I'll do it all at once this time. And this is listening on 8080, just expose the application. And then all the way down in advanced options for custom metrics for your custom endpoints. We're going to add an endpoint, or it's also listening on 8080 at the metrics path. And then when we launch this, we'll have both the application itself. We should have a metrics endpoint for it. We do, with our one little call there. And then let's actually create multiple versions of this job, because now we'll have even more metrics for the same. We'll have even more slices of this metric because we have multiple versions. So let's have Siege hit this one too to create even more data for us. We already have lots of data on this one, so we're just going to Control C this one. Oh, what did I do wrong? Oh, that's what I did wrong. All right. So now this one should be getting a lot more data as well. Maybe. Yep, we're seeing more data there. And let's add more listeners. You can see here really quickly why we need a machine to process all this data, because this alone, we now have two metrics endpoints that are serving up the same metric for two separate workloads that do essentially the same thing, but are listening 5 different ways. And if we go into our Prometheus setup, just grab this is fine, execute that. We now have multiple instances for this is fine. We should have some for the second one, at least soon. Did I forget to set something up? I don't think so. This is fine. Count. This is fine metrics. This is fine too. We edit to make sure I actually did set that up properly. advanced options, because I'm expecting to see more than I'm seeing. 88 in a container, add metrics. Yeah, that's fine. We'll force a. Are we hitting it? So we have data. Oh, that's interesting. So there was a very quick, almost instantaneous piece of downtime, but we are blasting it pretty hard. If I see this now, I should see, where's my endpoint? I should see some here. I should see some metrics. And good, that is being hit. You know, I don't know what the timing is as far as, I don't know how often our Prometheus is scraping this, but let's, oh yeah, good. We are getting more. So I just hit it before it had scraped, stored it. So yeah, that's essentially how you would add a custom metric into a VIA Rancher.
So cool, awesome. That was the last question, Jason. Anything else you want to show us or leave us with?
So as far as coming up tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time, I may play with times and dates depending on time zones and all of that. But come join us on the Ranchcast. I'll be basically trying to automate all the things. So the list of my ideas as far as what we're going to try to automate this over the next several months. This will be an ongoing live coding exercise with I may grab community members who are interested in joining me like on Microsoft Teams or Zoom to pair program this stuff, because this is one of those things that I want to do for the community to automate all the things. So if you go to rancher.com and go to blog, if you go down a couple to where I re-announce the Ranchcast, let's see, yep, right here. It was going to be today, but then I forgot, oh yeah, I'm doing a master class. I can't do two things at one time. We'll be automating all of these things and even more that you think of. So if you have ideas around what you want to automate, come join us on the Ranchcast channel. Join the Ranchcast channel on the Rancher user Slack and let me know what your ideas are. So, feel free to say, hey, I didn't see, automate this on the list. So we'll actually go through and we'll automate the Prometheus and Grafana setup as part of our provisioning process as well. So if you're on the Ranchcast, you'll walk away with a how-to on doing that, and all the code that we write through the Ranchcast will end up on my GitHub, public to everyone. So please join us tomorrow. And if for some reason you miss one because we all have work to do and jobs and whatnot, you go out to YouTube. It'll broadcast live here as well. It's like if you can't get to Twitch for the corporate firewall, but you get to YouTube, we'll broadcast live here as well. And then the episodes themselves will end up here on the Ranchcast. And as we do more together, I'll split these up into not just uploads, but the various quote unquote classes we're doing together. Classes is a bad term for it, but logical sections. And this is separate, of course, from our Rancher Labs channel, which has all kinds of awesome content, like today's class, for example. So if there are no more questions, I'll hand you back control.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, there's none. I think actually it'd be great to just leave it there. That was a super strong next step for people to take to join the Ranchcast tomorrow. I know I'm looking forward to it too. So why don't we leave it there? And just as a reminder to everybody, this was recorded and we will send out the recording and the slides later today. There is a survey, so if you're able to take just a couple minutes to fill that out, let us know if there's anything you want to learn more about. We'll try to make a topic around it. All right, everyone. Thanks. Have a great week. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. See y'all.